Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Trade Station Masterclass. And I'm sorry about the late start. I was having some technical difficulties. For some reason, my Trade Station was not responding. I'm not sure if it's good right now, but we'll try to go there in a moment to see if it's up and running. It's one of those things that sometimes my computer just decides to just freeze on me and not give me access to TradeStation. And I'm not sure if it's something on the TradeStation side or something on my computer, but something is definitely going on. So thank you for your patience. I'm glad to be here. As you can see, I'm a little bit rough on my voice. I hope that it can stand, with me throughout the presentation. I'm going to try to keep my tone a little bit low so that I don't get any cough attacks. So thank you for your understanding in this. Today, we are going to talk about EasyLanguage and how you can create and modify studies inside of the TradeStation platform. This is one of the things that TradeStation really shines, giving you the ability to customize and create pretty much anything you guys want on the TradeStation platform. Today, we're going to look at a particular type of study, which is called a Showme. This is like some proprietary name that TradeStation came up with for these types of studies, because the whole intention of these studies is to show you something on the chart, and that's the reason why the name Showme. But before we get started on the Showme programming, let's just get some introductions out of the way and some of the disclaimers as well. Just keep in mind that every single idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation, and also that active trading is not suitable for everyone. Also, I should have had the disclosures while I was saying that. Also, my name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities, and it's always a pleasure to be here with all of you. So there is some content that I'm going to go through right here in this PowerPoint, some elements of easy language programming that we all need to be aware of. Manolo is going to be kind enough to share with the class a link that gives you access to a PDF with the content of this presentation, just in case you want to keep it handy and use it for later reference. Thank you, Manolo, for that. All right, so a Showme study, what it does is that it marks the chart with historical alerts. That may not be very clear to a lot of you, but if you have a study that generates an alert, let's say, for example, a moving average cross. So you have two moving averages on the chart, and what you're looking for is for the two moving averages to cross. And if you generate an alert, of course, that's going to be an alert that it's real time, and it'll either pop up at the bottom of your screen or you'll hear a certain sound. That's the way that TradeStation generates those real-time alerts that something's happening. But alerts in EasyLanguage are only good in real time. You don't get alerted on anything that happened historically. So it's good from the moment that you turn it on going forward. But if you want to visualize every moment in the chart where an alert would have been generated, a Showme is great for that, because that same condition that you're looking for, in this case, we're talking about a moving average crossover, that same condition, you can apply it historically and say, hey, wherever you see a crossover, put a marking on the chart. That's exactly what we mean by mark the chart with historical alerts. It is designed to identify a bar that meets specific market conditions based on a defined set of rules. So we are the ones who are going to define those rules. We may take a look at a couple of built-in Showme so you can get an idea of how they behave. But Showme studies help you visually detect chart patterns and alert conditions you're looking for historically. A lot of the candlestick, bar pattern recognition that we have on TradeStation or built in to TradeStation is going to be in the Showme category. So if candlestick pattern recognition is something that interests you, go to the Showme studies, and that's where you're going to find most of these ideas. A little bit of easy language. We did this last time. We did our class on programming strategies, but I'll mention it again. TradeStation um, language is made up of a library of elements and resources. And when you use certain words instead of easy language, it'll be smart enough to recognize what type of word it is. If it's a reserved word, it'll come up in blue. It'll recognize it. You'll see it in blue inside of your document. And you'll know that the easy language programming language, has a certain purpose for that word. Same happens with easy language functions. They come up in magenta. So they are just snippets of easy language programming that are pre-created and pre-programmed for you. A lot of the technical calculations that you find in analysis are pretty much automatically created for you, like RSI calculations, standard deviations, some Bollinger bands. If you're looking for an ADX type of calculation, those are already built in as functions, and you can call them from inside your programming. So we're going to use certain punctuations. Yes, easy language is very finicky when it comes to punctuation. You have to use the right one. So we cannot replace parentheses with square brackets if we wanted to, because easy language is expecting a certain type of punctuation. So it's important that we know where the punctuations go, how they're utilized, and make sure we don't forget them. Otherwise, we're going to get verification errors, which is a process that TradeStation uses to make sure that you have the right components inside your code. But if you don't, it'll generate an error. And usually it's very good at telling you, hey, you made an error here. We need a semicolon, or we need a parentheses. Or sometimes, it's going to require you to look inside the code and try to figure it out. We're also using some element of programming that we call a variable. I usually call a variable some sort of a container, and it contains a certain calculation. And the reason why we use variables is because we want to simplify your programming process. So if you have a variable and you assign a certain calculation to it, all you need to do in the rest of your code is reference that variable. You don't have to, type that calculation or that formula over and over again. Once that is assigned to a variable, it's just a matter of referencing that variable. You see that many times inside of our easy language, and I'll show you an example of that. This is what a Showme would look like. Notice that there's only, 5, actually not even 5. There's 4 lines of code. The first line, let me bring in my laser pointer here. So the first line is my variable declaration. Notice that the word variables is in blue, so it's something that TradeStation recognizes. When you're going to create your own variables, we start the code with that word, put in a colon, and then list every single variable that we're going to be using. This is a user created word, big buyer bar. And a lot of these variables you're going to create yourself. You're going to name them yourself. So get into a habit of coming up with words that mean something to you, so that when you come back to the code, it is clear for you what is it that you're looking for. So this variable is something that was made up by whoever created this Showme, and it's called big buyer bars. The name of the variable pretty much tells you what it is trying to find. It is going to try those bars that have a buyer. Those bars where the buyers have a stronger pressure or bias. Okay, so big buyer bars. The way that it does that, once you declare the variable you want to use, the next step is to assign what the formula is going to be for that variable. And here, it's clear that we're looking for the lowest between these two. Notice this reserved word is min list. When you use it instead of the easy language code, what it's going to try to do is going to try to find the minimum value of what is provided inside parentheses. So a lot of times you don't know if the open or the close is lower than each other. So this will tell you which one it is. It'll grab that and then subtract the low. So what we're trying to find out is if the open or the close is going to try to establish the distance of the open and the close to the low of the bar. And it's going to try to make sure that those two are above half of the range. So if you think of a candlestick, from high to low, if you split that candle in half, which this is what it's doing, it's multiplying it by 0.5. So it's splitting that candle in half, and it's making sure that the open and the close are both above that midpoint of the candle. Of course, implying that you have more pressure on the buying side, even though there is a low point. So there was some selling pressure, of course. Both the open and the close are both on top of the midpoint. Of course, this could have been, written in many different ways. This is just giving you examples of different reserved words and syntax that you can use inside of your code. John is saying that my PDF is not the same as what's being presented. Did I send Manolo the right PDF? Let me just make sure that I did. Oh, it is not. I sent you the strategies one. That was my mistake, Manolo. Let me see if I can send you the right one. I thought that I had saved it, and apparently I didn't. But let me go ahead and do that. Oh, I know what may have happened. I actually, my computer actually froze in the process. So let me go ahead and save this as a PDF. Okay, and I'm going to go back one level. Okay, so this is the one. Thank you for pointing that out, John. Let me send this to Manolo and see if we can get a new link quickly. Okay, so I just sent it to Manolo. Manolo is my colleague. He's working with me here in class. So we'll update that link and provide it here in the chat as soon as he has it available, okay? David, yeah, the link will be right there in the chat. So just give Manolo a couple minutes and he'll have it ready for you. So as I was saying, you have the variable declaration statement. You have the variable assignment. So now we understand what big buyer bar means. Inside the code, notice that from that point on, all I need to do is reference that variable. If big buyer bar equals true, then I react. That I do the plot statement. The plot statement is pretty much putting a dot or a marking right on top of the candle. And the low here, the word low, just means that it's going to put that marking on the low of the bar. And it's going to tell you, if you go into the settings, that the style is a big buyer bar. That's the name of that plot. So it's interesting that, yes, you can use variables for simplicity, and I use them all the time. And when you open up EasyLanguage code inside of TradeStation, that's what you see. They use as variables multiple times. So let me, the last page on this PowerPoint is how to build studies. We're going to go through this process. We're going to go into the EasyLanguage development environment, which is step number 1. We're going to select a study type. In this case, we're going to create a Showme. We're going to give our indicator a unique descriptive name, and we're going to write our code. Once we write our code, then we verify the code to make sure that it's correct. There's no errors generated. And if there are any errors, then we fix the errors. And then on step number 7, we're going to verify again. So it's like a 3-step process. We write the code, verify, fix the errors, verify again. We go to properties to set scaling, style, and color, and then we verify again. Sometimes we have to continuously verify to make sure that what we did gets applied to the study. And a lot of times properties are important, because you get to choose the color, the style, where the indicator goes, and those are things that are important and that you shouldn't, forget to do on every single study. And once you've finished with the programming of the study, then you come over here and apply it to the chart so that it's visually what you were looking for, okay? Let's see. After that, I just have the disclosure. So let's go over here to my trade station and take a look. All right. So it seems like my trade station is responding. I was scared for a moment, and I'm going to open up a chart analysis. All right. From here, I was doing some testing on one of the different studies, and I switched my toolbar to a classic toolbar. I'm not sure if you see my toolbar right here on the top of my trade station, but this is not the way that charting shows the tools. Now, this is the old-fashioned charting toolbar that we used to have on older versions of TradeStation. A lot of users liked to have all the tools visible right here at the very top. But over towards the end, there's a little button that I click on and I go to customize. And this is where you have access to the toolbar. So I'm going to set the toolbar to the ones that's default on TradeStation, which is just the charting tools, and apply it. All right, so this is the one that is on TradeStation 10. And from here, I'm going to go to Studies and Add Studies. Okay, and from here, we have all the Showmes. You have to click on Showmes here on the left-hand side to see the Showmes that are available in TradeStation. Mohammed is asking, is it possible to just open the Easy Language Development environment without launching TradeStation? For sure. Yes, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Let me just insert a couple of these Showmes. I'm going to, do inside bar, just one inside bar, and then click OK. Yes, sorry about that. So Mohammed, the way for you to open the development environment without having to launch TradeStation is through your installed programs. So here on my programs, I would have to scroll down to TradeStation. And then you have the TradeStation platform and you have the TradeStation development environment. That's the way that you launch it. It's a small cough drop, just to see if I can get it under control, right? So what I just added to my chart was a Showme that is called Inside Bar. By looking at the candlesticks, you see that it's very difficult to see where it is. It's because by default, the Showme, it's a yellow dot and it goes right on top of the bar. But if I open up my chart a little bit more, I'm not sure if you're able to see that yellow dot sitting right here on top of that red candle. This is what's going to mark an inside bar. And an inside bar is just a bar that is small compared to the previous one. Not only small, but it's inside of it, meaning that the high of the inside bar is lower than the high of the previous bar, and the low of the inside bar is higher than the low of the previous bar. That's what an inside bar is. So every time in history where you see an inside bar, you're going to get a little marking. Okay, that's the intention of the Showme, just to get you to visually see where all these conditions are met. If you want to make the dot larger, you can do that. I'm going to go to Studies and Edit Studies. I can make the color different so it stands out more. Maybe we can use, let's use something that really stands out, like this blue. And I'm going to go to the style and make the dot even bigger. Now that's very big, but I can always, adjust the size if I need to. I just made it the largest dot that I could make it. Now for presentation, then this makes sense because every time we get an inside bar, then you see that blue dot. It's a great tool for you to find historical occurrences of a particular condition. Whatever that condition is, I think it's very valuable. Inside of the studies, let me go here to add studies. We have one that's called custom, go to Showme. It's called custom Showme. So from here, you can just insert it and modify the formula. But today, we're going to start everything from scratch and create our own study, right? So let's go over here. From here, we're going to go to apps and click on Easy Language. Okay. And David, I see your comment about building an algo. I suppose you're meaning a strategy is what we call, an algo that generates orders. Our previous class, I think it was building a strategy. So I'm sure that Manolo can find a link for that one. Okay. And the studies from my personal list, is that what you're referring, David? Because I have a whole bunch of studies that I've created, since I started teaching Easy Language, but they're not, really cool studies in any way. They're just examples that I've created in the past. A few examples here and there. We develop into more sophisticated examples. But the whole idea here is just to show you how to get started, how to do a little bit of programming. And then just build it in your own. Okay, so from here, from the development environment, I'm going to go to File, New, and then click on Show Me. It's a type of example, a type of studies that we're going to create today. Okay, and the name of this study is going to be exclamation JN. I always use a prefix for my show me's. Anytime you create something custom, I do recommend and suggest that you have a prefix and use the same prefix all the time so that when you go to the list of studies, then everything is grouped together. So I know that if I name every study that I create exclamation JN, I just have to go to that section and I see the whole collection of studies that I've created. And I'm going to call this high volume bar. Perfect. And let's see. What do we need? Well, I'm going to create a variable. And I'm going to call this high vol bar. I abbreviate some words. It still means something to me. Remember that this is a made up word. I know that high volume bar is going to hold a numeric calculation. So in the variable declaration statement, we have to initialize the variable to the type of calculation that it's going to hold. There are variables that hold, for example, true, false statements. There are variables that return some text. This one in particular returns a number, and that's why I initialize the variable to 0. 0 just means that this is a number or a numeric variable. So that's the only variable that I'm going to have. And once I declare the variable, because one thing is, or the first step is to declare it. You have to declare it so that Easy Language understands that this is a new word that I'm going to utilize. Once you declare it, then you can come here inside the code and start using it. I'm going to say high vol bar is going to be equal, and then I type in my condition. Is the variable declaration and the assignment something that is mandatory on every study? No. It just makes your study look a little bit more organized, readable, and when you come back to it, that custom word that you wrote in there is going to tell you everything about what your idea was when you created it. Okay, let's go ahead and define what high volume bar is. Ticks is the word that we use for volume. Ticks is greater than. And how do we define what a high volume bar is? We need to compare the ticks. Ticks is just going to tell you how many shares have been traded on that particular bar. And we have to compare it either to the prior ticks. So if I say ticks greater than, let's see here, ticks 1 bar ago. Let's go ahead and do something simple like this. Actually, I was, I broke my own rule. I initialized this as a numeric variable, but this expression that you have here, ticks greater than ticks 1 bar ago, it's actually a true false. So I cannot initialize this to 0. I have to initialize that to false. It's a true false variable. What was I thinking? This doesn't return a number. I'm comparing things to other things, and it's going to return either true or false. So let's change that from 0 to false. So if high volume bar, forgot the if here. If high volume bar, I'm going to do it on the 3rd line. If high vol bar equals true, then plot 1. I'm going to plot it. Now, notice that when we looked at the inside bar example, the dot was being put right on top of the candle because the placement that study picked was the low of the bar. So whatever you put in here is going to be the placement of the dot. Now, I can say low, and I'll show you how we can modify that a little bit later. And this is high volume bar. I'm just going to abbreviate it as HVB. Okay, and that's it. We have our 4 lines in place. And now I'm just going to verify this by clicking on that green check mark at the very top. I verify, and it says, of course, unknown identifier because I misspelled it. Do you guys see where the error is? It highlighted that word because it knows there's an error there. It's because it's bar with a B, not with a V. So let's verify again. And now we have no errors. If I look down here, 0 errors, 0 warnings. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the questions that are coming through. I suppose some of you are answering some of these questions. If you can trade still available, no, it's not. Thank you, David, for responding. Exactly. If there's any old videos you're looking for, make sure that you let Manolo know. Manolo, share the email address in the chat of where people should contact you or should contact us. There's a team behind, that email address. And yes, Masterclass was completely transferred over to tradestation.com. We're not doing it with the same frequency that we were doing it when you can trade, but all the classes and all the sessions are open. They're scheduled in the events page. So Manolo, if you can also share the link to the events page so that everyone has access to everything that's upcoming, including the masterclass sessions. Eric is asking, is there a TS strategy that points out support SD zones, support supply and demand zones? David, There, of course, are different calculations to identify support and demand zones, or supply and demand zones, support and resistance. Um, you know, you can take a look at, price channels. Um, and I know there are some sophisticated studies out there that look at the number of outstanding orders, like what's on the bid, what is on the ask, and make some sort of comparison, of um, unfilled orders. We don't have any indicators at the moment that do that sort of analysis. If there's any custom studies that you can bring in from the Easy Language Library, maybe it's worth, going out there and doing a search. But we don't have anything that's built in that looks at supply and demand based on market depth. We may have some indicators that calculate, support and resistance lines based on historical price information, like the price channel, or look at Bollinger Bands or things like that. But in terms of unfilled orders, nothing that is built in, but it's definitely something that can be created. Okay. So here we have an indicator, high volume bar. Let me go ahead and right click and go to properties. Oh, and Eric, you were asking about use the begin end in your code. Yes. You only use a begin and an end when you have multiple actions to take. For example, in this particular sentence or syntax that I wrote here, I said if high volume bar equals true, then plot. If it's only one action that it's taking, then you don't need a begin, you don't need an end. Now, if I want, in addition to plotting, if I want this indicator to also generate an alert, which would be another task, then I do need that begin and an end. So begin and end is only when you're going to list multiple tasks that the indicator is going to have to do, or multiple calculations are going to happen. In this case, since it's only one action of plotting, I don't need that begin or that end. I'm going to right click on the study and go to properties. I'm going to go to the chart style. This will be a dot. I'm going to make it a tad bigger. Chart color, I'm going to go here and make it bright blue. And that's it. I'm going to click OK and then verify one more time. Remember to verify after changing the properties so that whatever you picked gets applied to the study that you're creating. I'm going to come over here to my trade station. Let me remove this one so I don't get distracted with different buttons. Studies, edit studies. Let me remove the inside bar one. I'm going to go to studies, add study, and I'm going to scroll to exclamation JN, which is the section. It's actually in the Showme section. So exclamation JN, and here's high volume bar, the one that I just named. I'm going to click OK, and there it is. So we just created our first Showme. The fact that it appears so many times means that it's not really that relevant. Our condition was really relaxed. If you get a volume bar that is higher than the previous one, mark the bar. So if I were to come here and add volume, the built-in one to TradeStation, we can see that every time that we have a higher volume bar than the previous one, it marks the candle with that, cyan circle. So it's doing what we asked it to do. It may not be very relevant because the conditions very laxed, as we pointed out. One thing is that you notice how the dots are right on top of the low of that bar. If you want to create some separation separation between the dot and the actual bar, you can accomplish that by going back into your code. And instead of putting it right smack on the low, you do a variation of that. I'm going to say low minus, and I'm going to use the word, if I say low minus 1, let me show you what this does. Low minus 1. And I go back here to the chart. You see how it's separated from the candles, right? Because it just grabs the low price subtracts $1, and then it plots it there. But this probably doesn't apply for something that is priced differently. If I go, for example, to Verizon, the Verizon's trading at $40. You can see the separation is even bigger because for Verizon, a $1 distance is more than what I was looking at, which was Apple. I was looking at Apple, and it's pretty close. So if you want that flexibility of switching symbols and not have this drastic move, instead of using a hard-coded number, you can use the range of the bar. The range of the bar. You can use the range or a fraction of the range. Using the range is going to look at the range of the bar. Maybe that's a little bit too separate. If you want maybe half of the range or a quarter of the range, just take the word range and multiply it. I have to use an asterisk, 0.25. So this is a quarter of the range. Let's verify. And if I come back here to TradeStation, you can see that it's pretty close to the candle. If I go back to Verizon, it adjusts accordingly based on the range of the bar, a quarter of the range. Okay, let's go back here to Apple. Let's talk about the conditions a little bit. Let me go back here into the code. I can change the conditions right here. So if I don't want to only compare the ticks against the ticks of one bar ago, let's go ahead and compare them. Let's go ahead and create an average. I'm going to create an average of the ticks. So in here, I'm going to create this variable that's average ticks. And this will use the function average. And it's going to average ticks for 30 bars. I don't have AVG ticks declared. So if I try to verify this before declaring, it's going to say, I don't understand what AVG ticks is. You have to declare any word that you create, you have to declare it first. I'm going to take that word, put it right here in the variable declaration statement, add a comma, put the word in. This particular one, this is going to be numeric because this formula returns a number, average ticks. You could also, make this 30 flexible by creating it into an input, and I can do that right now. An input allows you to have flexibility. So let me go here to inputs. AVG, let me call it wall length. Wall length is also a word that I made up, but I can use it as an input, initialize it at 30, and then instead of having a hard coded 30 here, I can just use that word and it references that number. And the advantages of having it as an input is that I can modify the study and make adjustments if I need to. So here, high volume bar, the ticks, I want those to be greater than AVG ticks. Let's verify. All we did here was added a new variable, assign the new calculation of that variable, which is AVG ticks, added it here, added an input so we could have a little bit more flexibility. So if I go over here to, let me remove this. If I go over here to TradeStation, you can see how the dots are not as frequent as before. We still have a lot of dots though. For example, in this area, it's because as long as the volume is greater than the average, then you get a dot. Let's go here to studies, add studies, and let's compare that to volume average. So take a look at all these dots that are right here. It's because you see all those bars are above this average. Now the average is set to 30. So let me set this to 30 as well. Okay, so I have the 30 bar moving average. What I want to do though, is I probably want to have a factor multiplied against that average. So if I come back here to the code, and I'm going to call this a vol factor, and I'm going to initialize that to maybe 1.5. So what I'm going to do is in the in the assignment of high volume bar, I not only want to compare the number of shares against the average, I want to compare it against the average times the volume factor. It's going to take the average and multiply it by 1.5, which means that, sorry, what happened here? Semicolon. Okay, so which means that the current volume needs to exceed the average times 1.5. So we're talking about 50% over what the average is. Let's go ahead and verify this. Study not verified. Oh, I misspelled volume factor, so I need an R here. Okay, I have that insert blinking. I'm not sure how I put it in there. Oh, insert right here. Okay, so let's verify this one more time. We missed a parentheses, and I put that inside parentheses to control, the order of operations. Even if I'm pretty sure that it'll do it in the right order, I always have parentheses to make sure that I'm having that factor multiplied against the average and then comparing it to the ticks. Let's verify that. And then go back here to TradeStation. And now, of course, now you see that the blue dots are just rarely plotted. The reason is because it's looking for volume days where the volume exceeds the average by 50%. Now, those are significant days. Now we start correlating those days with market movement. Is it telling you something? It's something happening. No, that's how analysis techniques get started. You plot something simple on the chart, and then you start looking at how the market responds after you have these markings on the chart. In some areas, I do see some, market movement, in some others, not so much. So maybe we still need to continue to refine this idea, right? How to limit the number of decimals? Mohammed is asking in average ticks. If you want to do it on the plots, for example, the Showme doesn't have a plot of decimals because what it does, it just plots a dot. So we created a Showme for that reason, so that we don't have decimals. Like, for example, volume down here, you see how it doesn't have decimals? If I right click on this volume study and I go to the EasyLanguage, this is the built-in study. And I do this a lot of times because I want to see how TradeStation builds these studies. And if I scroll down, you have the calculation of average, but the formatting is done on the property side. So if I go to properties and I go to chart style, my volume, this is the plot. Let's do grid style. So in the grid style, you see volume is a number, but decimal places is 0. So that's how we control the decimal places in a volume plot if you don't want to see decimals. Because, of course, the volume doesn't have decimals. It's either one share. You don't have half a share or a quarter of a share. So decimals are not necessary. So it's done in the properties tab. Just select the value, assign it as a number, and drop the decimals to 0. Okay. Excellent. And that's it. That's how you create a custom Showme. I know that I created a simple idea, but the whole concept of the class is to show you the tools that are available in TradeStation so that you can start something from scratch and then continue to modify that idea. We started off with something simple as comparing the volume of one bar against the volume of the prior bar. We saw that we got way too many dots. So we had to refine that idea. And then we started doing, let's create an average of volume, make sure that, that bar is higher than the average. And we still had way too many dots. So then we said, let's include a factor to multiply the current average and make sure that the volume is higher than that. So that's how you get these significant high volume bars, which is the name of the indicator we just created. Let's take some questions here from the chat. So William is asking in line 9, what is the purpose of HVB? What you see here inside quotations is just a label. It's a custom label that I'm providing this plot statement. It helps you identify which plot is which. In trade station studies, you can have multiple plots. You can have up to 99 unique plots. By giving your plots a distinctive name, it helps you, organize your plots and know which one is which. When I go over here to my trade station and I go to studies and I go to edit studies, if I edit the volume or the indicator that I just created, when I come over here to the style, I can change the style of HVB, which is the plot that I created. And this is just a name. It doesn't have any, calculation importance. It's just an abbreviated of high volume bar that I added as a custom label to my plot. But if you have a study that has, 6 or 7 different plots, then it starts getting confusing if you don't have a custom name. Let me show you what it looks like if I didn't have that custom name. I can remove this because the custom label is kind of optional. It's something that helps you organize your code, but it doesn't have an impact on the calculation. If I don't have a custom label, when I come over here to my study and I go to edit it, if I go to the style, notice that it says plot number 1. It doesn't use that custom label that I provided it. In terms of a Showme, maybe it's not a big deal because it's only one plot. But if you have an indicator like volume average, now let me go ahead and cancel out of this, go to volume average, customize it, and go to the style. It makes sense to have a custom name for your plots here because now you know for sure which one's which, not only 1, 2, or 3, which then you say which one is the volume, which one is the average. This is very clear now that you have that custom label created. So hopefully that clarifies it, William. Are there any other questions? I see that Shinya has the raised hand. I'm not sure if that was I'm not sure if there's a question. All the questions need to be typed up in the chat, unfortunately. I know that when we were in the masterclass, I used to turn on microphones so that people could speak. When we get these larger classes, it's a little bit challenging to have people use microphones. But if you really need to use a microphone, let me know and I'll give you that right that you can speak to me, okay? Because I just have to turn on the microphone for somebody and you can speak if you want to do that, okay? So feel free to ask me for microphone rights. Set plot color, when do you use it? Very interesting question, David. Set plot color is conditional styling. So you can set that based on a condition. For example, if you take a look at this indicator at the bottom, it's using red. It's using red and cyan histogram. I'm pretty sure that that's based on a condition. So if something meets the condition, paint it red. But if it's not, paint it cyan. If I go back to the code of this, if I scroll down, I'm pretty sure here it is. See color criteria on line 53. And then if the close is greater than the close of one bar ago, then set plot color, and then it has an up color and a down color. So it does allow you to change the color of your plots dynamically based on a condition. It's pretty cool, to tell you the truth. You're very welcome, David. All right. I don't see any more questions. I'm going to call it a day. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that I can see you in future classes right here at Trade Station. We have a special presentation this afternoon at 4:30 or 4 p.m. or 4:30, Manolo? It's a presentation on options, is finding trading opportunities in 0 days to expiration options. So it's going to be a very interesting presentation by a guest speaker. His name is Brandon Wendell. So you're all invited to join. Manolo, if you have that link for registration for that event, make sure you share that link with us here in the class. But I do want to end saying that it was a pleasure spending this time with you. I apologize for my throat. I hope it gets better for next class. So I'll see you guys next class. Okay, thank you for joining me today. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.